Good evening. Welcome to Around the World with Dee and Friends. Tonight, I am very happy that Denarde is with me. Denarde is the expert on a lot of topics, and we're going to be talking about the Michigan election results, also the issue where Spain and Morocco tensions are concerned, and we may bring in some more topics as well. Denarde, how are you doing?
I'm always fired up.
Always fine. Yes. Okay, well, right now, I'd appreciate if everybody could hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on X, follow me on Upscrolled, and just share the show out. Let everybody know that we're live right now. I want to try to build the audience before we get going on the topics. So, right now, that's what I am doing. Onto my Facebook to let everybody know we're here. We're here, everybody. Hi. So, how was your day?
Uh,
Denard?
they're pretty good so far. That's way better now since now that I see what's happened. Now that I saw what happened in Michigan.
Yes, yes, that was positive. That was so positive. And I know there are people, I saw some of the comments on social media. Yeah, the white nationalist viewpoint, bringing religion into it and trying to say, um, just derogatory things about him because of his religion. So I was like, well, that's it's really sad, but it's like a history here that continues because I remember the discussions that were about with not wanting Catholics to be in office. They were afraid the Catholics were going to bring in the Pope and we're going to follow what the Pope was saying. And people were afraid. They were like, we escaped Europe for a reason to get away from all that. And they were afraid what was going to happen to this country if you had a Catholic in office. So this is nothing really new to the U.S. We go through this all the time.
Yeah, basically it's just they basically different people, same playbook. You know, the fear mongering has never disappeared. It just evolved with another target.
Yes, exactly. And it was interesting too because just yesterday we were talking about the Christian nationalist, and then one of the articles, this professor was talking about the relation with the KKK. Um, of course, they don't have a lot of the stuff the KKK did with rituals and different things, but uh, this time around, this Christian nationalism, they accept Catholics and Jews where before the KKK, hated them when they were on. I was like, this is crazy. All this hatred, but yeah, you could see because they hate the Muslims. It's kind of like, okay, we'll give the Jews and the Catholics a pass. We're going after the Muslims this time. Uh, just this hate, this constant hate.
Exactly. So, ready to get started?
Well, let me just wait till some more people get in here. I'm sharing it out, so as to get Evelina and others in here. That's my big thing, trying to get the audience in. It takes me a little time to share around. Okay, let me see. Do I got everybody? And then share again wider on X. Okay, looking at all the names here. And let me just tag them all so I'll share and build them. Okay, I'll share it on the timeline again. Okay. It's like my moment of stress in the very beginning. I was sharing it out to get the audience in here. Okay, let me go over to X pretty quickly. Okay, here we go. Where is it on X? Where's X? Oh, here it is. Let me share this around. This isn't what I'm sharing. Here it is. Share this. And pin this to the top too. Pin and make this a bit. Put some hashtags in here. Yeah, but that was just really, really. I was just so happy, like so many other people, with the election results, and the fact, we had heard about all the money that AIPAC and Israeli lobby was putting into it. So it was really a good outcome.
It, yeah, it was. So, mm, so I'm sure everyone is fully aware, and the results actually came in, and many media outlets have confirmed that Abdul Said, the progressive candidate, won the primary against APAC candidate Haley Stevens. The margin that he won, which is he basically won by, he was ahead of Stevens by basically 1 point, but it's a win is a win, so we can accept that. Um, and everyone's eye was on Michigan for two reasons. One, that because it was over $60 million was spent to basically have him lose, basically, and not to mention the fact that we now confirm that Mally McMorrow, I think that's her name, who previously ran for the Senate, was basically pressured to drop out.
Hmm.
Yeah. So basically, um, McMorrow pressured, um, pressured, was basically pressured to drop out by people from lobby groups, including people like Chuck Schumer.
Oh, right. That's disgusting. So he's showing his racism there.
Yeah, and right here, and it says, and Edward Isaac Delvier actually detailed in new reports for CNN how Chuck Schumer and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand held a secret meeting with Mally McMorrow, McMorrow donors, to basically slander her and get them to donate to Haley Stevens instead. This eventually led to McMorrow dropping out of the race way too soon.
Hmm.
The two senators from New York went through lengths for basically force establishment politicians like Gretchen Whitmer to endorse Stevens. Chuck Schumer saw this as a proxy war between pro-Israeli shill like himself and what he saw as anti-Israel Bernie Sanders supporters. All this money and influence is indeed Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand's last attempt to keep blank checks for Israel flowing. And the irony is about all of this that APAC Haley, which is basically the nickname people gave her,
Mm-hmm.
relied on actual NYC elites while running a campaign in which she accused Abdul Saeed of just that. The reporting says Gillibrand and Schumer hosted APAC Haley's meetings with donors.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, and all after all that money dumping to get to keep a to basically to make sure a progressive candidate lost, he eventually won.
And that was good. That really shows them. And I'm just so glad the people.
Yeah, it's just yeah. Many see this as a huge victory for the progressive wing and for the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and a huge loss for the establishment side as well as pro-Israel sides. So and this is and many people and this was actually and there's many people don't see this and many people and the second reason why people's eyes was on Michigan because it basically was deciding the future of how the Democratic Party will be whether to continue the status quo of being running to the center of being moderate or actually running on progressive or populist platforms and well the people have spoken.
Yes, people have spoken.
Yeah, and it's mind-boggling that $16 million was basically spent on this race to make sure he loses, and he ended up and he still won. So f you APAC
Yes,
and f you moderate establishment Democrats. Uh,
exactly. Yeah, but
and
they haven't been representing the people in forever.
yeah, and now the modern Democrats are basically freaking the heck out because now they either have two choices to either fall in line and deal with it or in the case of Joe Carville and John Fetterman leave the Democratic Party, for which either option we're okay with because y'all been basically basically kind of useless.
Exactly, they'd be useless. You know, it's a corporate party, and people are tired of it. They want somebody that's going to represent them.
Yeah, and now they're pushing this argument, and they push this argument that Abdul can't beat Mike Rogers, um, which is ridiculous and it's BS. And because people seem to forget that Mike Rogers ran for the Senate 2 years ago against moderate Democrat Elisa Slotkin, and who beat him during literally like was considered at the time a red wave year.
Hmm.
He lost during a red wave year, even though the margin was very very slim.
Hmm.
He still lost.
He still lost. He doesn't have the capacity to win.
Yeah, and yet these people want us to believe that he's going to beat Abdul in a huge a huge blue wave year, which were given given things are right now, it's most likely going to happen. Like
No, this, like I said, it's the blue wave, and I just saw different people's responses too. Um, they're fed up with the status quo, um, and then even if you get into what's going on in Gaza in the West Bank, people are sickened by that.
exactly. And as much as um and it gets to, and I keep hearing and there's to continue this continual argument we've seen from the centrist side of the Democratic Party that then the only way to win the general is that you have to move to the center. Then I move to the center, and and it's a ridiculous argument. It's a argument, and this is like the type of thing they've been pushing these people have been pushing after the 2024 election when Kamala Harris lost pretty badly to Donald Trump. And all I have to say is, and I have to say is, what these people want is a centrist campaign that's quiet on tough on border, just distance itself from Palestinians, talk about law and order, and just reach out mainly to the moderate Republicans. You had two candidates back in 2016 and 2024, and both of them lost to what was considered the most worst candidate in American history.
This constant moving to the right, moving to the center, it hasn't worked.
Right. And keep in mind, many people, it's worth pointing out that Kamala Harris actually ran to the right of Joe Biden, which is which is pretty insane considering that because Joe Biden was pretty much of a right wing Democrat throughout his entire political career.
Mm-hmm. And this is what I don't understand. Their base is to the left. And they keep acting like, well, if we go to the right, we'll pick up some unhappy Republicans. They're not looking for their base. They're looking for others. Oh, we can replace the left. I mean, it's stupid. Be a Republican and don't be a Democrat.
Yeah, and people are happy and breathing fresh air that the progressive one, but many of us are basically rightfully so angry. We are mad that this had that we literally had to force change into the Democratic Party, a party that's shown to be literally incapable of or even willing to change. We're furious that we have to continue thinking we have to put if we could just push them to the left that we think will happen. We're furious over the fact that many Democrats are actively refusing to evolve, and the egos and inaction of our Democratic leaderships, many of them are older than freaking credit cards themselves, have brought us to this point.
Right. They need to go. They need to go. We have to have term limits or something. These people are pathetic. They're so separate from everybody else.
It is, and it's very maddening that we have to literally have to continue having um these discussions around what's happening around especially on electability.
Yeah.
And because every time because as we have seen many times, being a moderate, being a centrist candidate is not being electable. I mean, and people, and I'm sure people will point out. Well, Joe Biden was a centrist. Who was basically basically a centrist, but he won. Okay. First of all, yes, he was a centrist, but he basically also promoted some left wing policies that was popular. And second, there was that campaign, that election that people like to shove down our throats about centrists winning was during a pandemic year. The kind of thing where we had to close our doors because people were literally dying.
Mm-hmm.
Dying. Third, it was on top of the pandemic, it was a national outcry of police against police brutality. So there was so many stuff going on that led to Donald Trump's temporary downfall.
Right. And people during the primaries, the candidate they wanted was Bernie. And again, they were working against Bernie.
Exactly.
Just dumping Biden in there.
And it is it is worth pointing out, it's worth pointing out. And I know this is going to be really ignoring, really annoying to some people, but I think it's worth pointing out. You kidding? The Democratic Party throughout their entire 4 years in office, and now have active, and even after in the aftermath of the 2024 election, has basically thrown their voters under the bus so consistently. They're considered their approval rating, even though their poll shows that the Democrats most likely will win back the House. They're still going to be they're still very unpopular, more than the Republican Party. And it could still face the same problems with massive infighting and corporate backing and the thoughts of corporate backing, including the fact that considering their current DNC chair has been a freaking disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily after the release of after he basically delayed the autopsy, the 2024 autopsy report, which many pointed out does not, and basically he removed the part where it talks about Israel and Palestine, which a lot of experts agree it was the main factor of Kamala Harris's defeat.
Yes, that was the main factor, definitely.
The thing, and I cannot believe that I have to remind my people, especially liberal Democratic voters, voters, you can't and too many candidates out there and politicians out there who are probably listening. You can't promise change only to turn around and capitulate to the right on key principles that you're supposed to stand for, because not only will you lose people to your left, the right will just keep moving the goalposts again and again and again, and you'll only have yourselves to blame. Something of which the Democrats seems to have taken a very long time to figure out that last part.
Hmm. And right now, we're watching the country be sucked dry. And where are the Democrats?
And that's the thing. Many people have pointed out that the fact that there's not very a consistent, a consistent messaging. While yes, a lot of the Democratic Party are unitedly against Donald Trump, they don't seem to talk about. They seem to be not united on what comes next if they get elected, and what's most importantly, when they get back into power.
Hmm. And it just seems it's this repetition of standing with the corporate lobbyists all the time. You can't have health care for all. Even though we know we can, we're a monetary sovereign nation, we can have health care for all. There is no problem with that at all. There's no problem with funding, where Social Security is concerned. We could fix our roads and bridges and do a whole lot here. But it's a choice.
Exactly.
It's a choice not to.
Exactly. Um, but back to the Michigan. Yes. So even after, as of right now, we just found out that Mallory McMorrow and Haley Stevens, after she found out that she lost that all that $60 million from APAC was all for nothing, and and her desperate political pipe dream, and pipe dreams basically disappeared. She basically conceded the race and is now backing, formally endorsing, Abdul, including McMorrow, and including former Vice President Kamala Harris. Um, and as for the Republican side, they don't seem to be united on, and they don't even know what to do with him, because after the primary, the conservatives are freaking the heck out, and the U.S. Senate and basically Republicans wasted no time to attack him. The problem, however, is that they're not really sure how to counterattack and counter populist policies, which is pretty popular among Michiganders. So they decided to go to try the one trick that they believe worked for a long time: fear mongering about him being a communist and Muslim.
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, the lines they use. That's going to be all this year. They're going to continue it on, using those lines about people, about being communist, being this, being that. I mean, come on, this is just so old. They
I
can't.
know, right?
Yeah, they can't talk about policies. They've got to, like I said, to fear mongering.
And it's not just the Republican side. And many people are pointing out, what about the Democrats? It's important because the Democratic Party does have to be united. And I appreciate his former opponent, and I do appreciate his former opponents doing what they expected of us, because in the event, if it were Stevens, we all know they would be saying vote blue no matter who.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm glad to see his opponents actually practice what they preach. Preach. So also that's the one good credit I would give to Haley Stevens. She recognized she lost, and she's throwing in the towel, and she's putting her supports in. which isn't always the case because we saw so what we saw with what we saw with Mamdani, and we're seeing with Daria the lead and other and other DSA members. Some Democrats seem to be aren't willing to fall in line as they would expect us to do. And listen, I know how hard it is to suck it up and vote for a candidate that you don't really like. I've done that myself. I done that myself in 2020. It's no fun. And that sucks. And like it's the first that let and this is the first time that Lenny leftists don't really doesn't haven't had that haven't don't have to do that now.
Right.
So I empathize with the liberals who don't want to one vote for those the other DNC candidates. But that being said, as much as we try to welcome liberals and Stephen voters in particularly into the fold, we're going to have to acknowledge that we may have to cut our losses, and with some Democrats who just aren't gettable. And I think that number, thankfully, is fairly low, though, because low. But we have to face the fact that the Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, has an Islamophobia problem. Racism is alive as well. As much as we talk about racism is in the Republican Party, racism is also pretty much alive in the Democratic Party.
Oh
Now,
yes.
now even though you have his opponents getting in line behind him, you also have some Democrats who are going to refuse to support him just because of who he is. In fact, some Democrats, like for example Senator John Fetterman, for example, they're just implicitly endorsing the Republican opponent. Because he basically because even though John Fetterman said he agrees with a lot of things Abdul says, he's refusing to back him because he happens to be critical, because Abdul happens to be critical of Israel. That's basically his red line. And he even and Fetterman, just like as well as Joe Carbell, actually threatened the Democratic Party if they moved more to the left, or started being more critical of Israel. Which, bye, we're not going to miss you.
Exactly. I mean, enough is enough. There's no other foreign country that we're like this with.
Yeah. So and people are like, well, and I know people are are disappointed that Fetterman is not going to help his own fellow Democrat to win the Senate race in Michigan. I'm like, why would he? He's basically a Republican for all intent and purposes.
Right.
And I think it's important that the fact that the voters in the Democratic Party who are going to agree with him, because quite frankly, they're freaking. And I know there are going to be a lot of Democrats and the Democratic voters and that are going to agree with him, because let's point the fact they're pretty racist pieces of crap too.
Mm-hmm.
Now the only thing surprising to me about the clip I saw, about this clip from John Fetterman, was that Fetterman was at least self-aware enough to know how ugly he is, because he is, objectively speaking, he is ugly on the outside and he is and on the inside. But
exactly.
it's surprising that he's smart enough to realize that, because he somehow isn't self-aware aware enough to know that he would get obliterated in the Democratic primary.
Mm-hmm. Well, Evelina has a comment here. She says Al Sayed is a centrist, though. His status quo on Ukraine, for example, and why did he feel obliged to address anti-Semitism, thus legitimizing a Hasbro talking point?
I think it's pointing out that the fact that, throughout this campaign he was constantly about Israel and Palestine, and he made mostly, and yes, and there are some comments I don't agree with. Like he said he supports Israel. He is saying Israel does exist, but he also understands that he wants, in a way, wants in Israel to be a much more inclusive democratic state. So I get it. He's trying to create basically a balancing act. Um, and it is most and yes, he's being asked these questions mostly because he's Egyptian, he's Muslim, and so he's going to so and because of that he's going to face a lot of scrutiny, and he's facing questions about and he's going to be facing questions about Israel, but he's been very holding the line when it comes to not sending money to a foreign government to or that's actively committing a genocide, which which we can and I know that we can give him credit for.
Mhm.
Um, as for his comment on Ukraine, I haven't really heard much about his comments on that. On comments on that, I'm I'm fully aware that he's trying to he actually pointed out that during one interview that he said that he has no problems with Jewish Americans or a problem with Jewish Israelis. The one thing he has a problem with is the fact the Israeli government is actively committing a genocide.
Right. There's that the government represents the right end of everything, the far right. The Likud party is the right wing party, and so everything is like here in the essence of being to the right. So you have people in Israel that some people want a two state, and there's others that want a one state that's progressive, that's equality for everybody. But the voices that we hear a lot is the ones that are with the government, the far right voices. And the far right voices are in the media as well.
Yeah. Um, so, as far as we are happy about the fact that he pulled it off in the primary, it's worth noting if we need to make sure that he pulls it off in the general election, because the general election is going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
And if he is able to actually pull off a victory here, the Democratic establishment, they're not going to be able to come up with some BS electability argument about AOC in 2028, and whether or not she's viable in swing states in 2028 if she chooses to run for president. So we need to take that argument away from them and elect somebody who can actually win in one of these battleground states. And it's also important to elect somebody to take up Bernie Sanders' mantle, because they take up Bernie Sanders' mantle because let's face it, and let's face it, Bernie is getting up there in age,
Yes, I was
and
thinking.
even though he did already file the paperwork to run in 2030, believe it or not, I still think it's important that we have to have somebody there as a backup, and just in case if should he chooses to retire, or God forbid anything happens to him. But I do, but I really do believe that and Abdullah Saeed can pull it off, because as William Lawrence put it, organized people can be organized money, and he is living proof of that. In um, in what was and was able and was a is and Abdul is a living proof of that, and he was able to harness anger over data centers to propel himself to victories in Michigan's and seventh congressional district. And I'll say it is already deploying the same strategy, which I think is smart, because that truly is the issue that unites people across the political spectrum. These data centers. So
Mhm.
we need all hands on deck to pull off the victory.
Now, Evelina says, yeah, well, I'm sure that it's because they asked him. Evelina says, why did he even mention Israeli Jews? It's probably because they asked him about it, I would assume.
Yeah, they basically, and well, to be fair, most Israelis are, well, and most Israelis see Jewishness as an ethnicity. That's why they call themselves Israeli Jews. Um, that's I think that's one. I think that's why and I think it was mentioned. I think he mentioned that because it was. I think it was during an interview, a question about whether or not he supports Israel's right to exist.
And no one brings up the fact of Palestine. That's what gets me. What about Palestine's right to exist? All
Yeah,
the
and he did mention that. Like no one. He also mentioned that that no one ever talks about whether or not Palestine has a right to exist, which is which is something that people need, something that needs to be asked a
Yes,
lot.
it does. It does, and there needs to be action to stop Israel. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, as for the other races in Michigan, we actually got confirmed that in Michigan's 13th congressional district, Donovan McKinney actually pulled off a victory against incumbent Sheree Thanader, an APAC back candidate and a current member of Congress.
Mm.
So another incumbent was defeated,
Oh, good.
and many people were very much expected this race to not be well for Thanader because he's pretty much alienated his entire pretty much everyone in everyone in his district. So he's going to be, and many people expect his race to be an inevitable a defeat for him. So I'm happy that he lost, and mainly because he's also an APAC shill who literally went on a tour in Israel. Israel. And Donna McKinney, he's basically the progressive, and and when I think about Thanader, he's an interesting figure because he ran for even though he considers himself as a progressive, actually ran for the governorship back in 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and he lost. But then he decides to run for Congress. I think it was in 2022 or 2020. I'm not sure, but he did run for Congress, and he kind of just and during that time as running for Congress, and during his time as a member of Congress, he pretty much pandered to the right as well as to the Israeli lobbyists.
You know, those days are over. People are fed up with that. It's like we want someone that's going to represent us, not some other country. It doesn't matter what country it is. You know, we
Yeah,
want them representing us here in the U.S.
yeah. Mm. In and next one in Michigan's first congressional district, Kyle Blanquist, unfortunately, the progressive Kyle Blanquist, unfortunately, did not pull off a victory. He lost by about 23 points, which is very sad to see. Um, but however, in the seventh congressional district, William Lawrence, the progressive, ended up pulling off a major victory by a landslide, arguably, and he won by 14.5 points, which is really impressive and
Yes.
really impressive. And this guy is a strong progressive. He's a progressive. He's a huge organizer, and I believe he is one of the founders of the Sunrise Movement, DSA endorsed. So
Oh,
this is a really huge victory here. Now in the 11th congressional district, which is Haley Stevens' old seat, um, unfortunately, Aisha Faruqi, she lost by about 18 points to Jeremy Moss, who basically admitted that he's running for office because of Israel.
oh, not for the U.S. He's not running for the U.S. He's running because of Israel.
Yeah, and another one here, and outside of Michigan, we actually have Missouri's congressional district, Missouri's first congressional district, which unfortunately Cori Bush did not succeed in her comeback, and she lost by 22 points against Impact candidate Wesley Bells.
Oh,
And because I'm sure people are aware, she got out. She was a member. Cori Bush was a member of Congress who was actually by the APAC candidate in 2024. My hope was that this was going to be her comeback moment, but unfortunately that's not quite where voters in the districts are at. Well, so I'm pretty disappointed in that. Um, and there was actually a referendum in a ballot measure in Missouri as well to whether or not to approve the current congressional district, which surprisingly the voters in Missouri overwhelmingly opposed, which is pretty surprising.
Mm-hmm.
And in Kansas, and there was actually a ballot measure in Kansas, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's basically around the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And so to put it very basically, the state Kansas State Supreme Court it's basically simple. It's basically simple. And as you know, the governor has to appoint a Supreme Court justice.
Right.
The thing is, it's actually not a point, but the Senate does not confirm it. It's actually a board or a commission of attorneys that does the confirmation.
Huh.
Which is pretty interesting, and pretty interesting. Which is why, which I actually support. I think that's what we need. The need, and I've been thinking that that's how I've been vocal about the Supreme Court during Supreme Court confirmations in the United States should be done by a commission of attorneys and judges and federal judges and federal attorneys and all that. I do not believe it's wise to have a Senate, which is, let's be honest, the Congress is full of partisans, so they're going to vote. So they're going to vote in their way. I don't think that's a good idea. So that's why I support it. Which is why that when you look at all the justices of the Supreme Court, six out of the seven members, are all appointed by Democrats, by a Democratic governor. And Republicans hate that system, which is why they actually pushed. It is why they actually pushed a ballot measure, a ballot measure that basically rewrites create the Constitution Amendment, which would basically remove the ability of the Senate of the governor and the commission to appoint Supreme Court justices, but instead hand that opportunity to the people. Basically, it was Republicans' attempt to move the court to the right, as they see the court as basically a obstacle course to many of their policies, which is why they actually, like, for example, when Kansas Republicans tried to push for a partisan gerrymandering, the Supreme Court shut that down.
Right.
So they were hoping with this ballot measure they would successfully push the court to the right, considering that Kansas has been having pretty good track record of voting for Republicans. Except for those two moments during the governor's election in 2018 and 2022, which was pretty shocking. But yeah, and the voters in Kansas actually overwhelmingly rejected it.
Okay.
So that was a pretty interesting a race. The race that many people didn't get enough cover for. And I think it's important, and I do believe it's important for these ballot measures to get the to get at least get some to get some recognition.
Yes.
So the results it was a massive landslide. This result was like to reject it, then because the voters because in this amendment was rejected by 61, and the people voted no for this no for this amendment, but by 61%.
Okay.
So that is a huge loss for the Republicans.
Right. 61%. That's, a substantial number.
Yeah, it is that it is that bad when even some Republicans voters saying like, nah, let's keep it, we like it the way it is. Even they don't trust themselves of electing court justices.
No.
So yeah, it's a this has been a so this is so August 4th has been a pretty interesting primary slash election slash election night.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Very interesting. And we have the usual drama, propaganda, people, like you said, scare tactics and fear mongering. But we've had it for so many years.
Exactly. It's just interesting. I don't think yeah, because like I said, the August 4th primary and ballot measures it's been a pretty interesting because we got some because on one hand we did get some victories, but on the other hand we did get some defeats. We got some losses. So it's I guess it depends on how you look at that day.
Mm-hmm.
But in all, I'm happy. And all in all, I'm overall happy that some of these progressives like McKinney and Said and Lawrence have won the primary, and it goes to shows that even in swing states in Michigan, even swing states like Michigan's are very open to left wing candidates.
Right. Yeah, they're fed up with what's going on. People have had enough, really.
So this is a so I'm really I'm really happy about how this election goes. So now we got to focus on. So like I said, we got to focus on the general election because
Right.
that's where the big prize is.
Mm-hmm.
And if we off, that would be a huge win, huge
Mm-hmm.
win for the left.
Right, and this is their time. This is their time.
Yeah. And let's see now. Right now in Texas, and during the Texas Senate race, Texas is having a pretty difficult time concerning the fact that that many of his Republicans supporters are and politicians are pretty much avoiding him.
That's funny.
Yeah, and many considering the fact that he's considered a controversial figure, which is pretty hard, which is pretty much a nice way to say that this guy's a huge piece of work and not in a good way.
Right. Time for him to go.
Yeah. And lastly, we got Ohio, where Max Miller, the elected member of Congress, in Congress who represents Ohio's 7th congressional district, has been under fire lately after a massive scandal that about his past, which caused him, which there's been allegations of him basically abusing his family,
Uh-oh.
and he has been under hot water, even facing pressures to resign, and to even facing pressures to resign,
Hmm.
and so basically his reelection campaign is marred by controversies after Emily Moreno it stated that Miller had committed domestic violence and child abuse against her and her daughter.
Oh,
Um, and the reason why Emily Moreno is actually sounds sounds familiar is because that's basically current Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno's daughter.
hmm.
So, and Bernie Moreno, who was Miller's former father-in-law and ally, actually called for him to resign. So but he's trying to basically hold on to his seat and basically and even called for an ethics committee to investigate him.
Oh,
And
gosh.
but even though but these investigations and these ethic investigations they tend to drag on, and that I think that's what he's trying to do. Hopefully, drag on long enough to basically just sweep this under the rug.
Right, that's what he's trying to do. That's what it sounds like he's trying to do.
Right. And in North Carolina, in the Representative Chuck Edwards of North Carolina's 11th congressional district is also running. Well, I would say was running for re-election. He was because he was facing a massive ethics committee investigation over allegations that he had behaved inappropriately with a female staffer.
Ugh.
Female staffer. Following the release of the committee's reports, which included the recommendation that he be censured, he actually ended his bid for re-election.
Wow.
That means that and keep in mind the deadline of the primary has long passed in North Carolina,
Right.
and so when now Democrats and Republicans are going to be rushing in that district on who will be his replacement.
Right. Okay.
And like, when I saw that, I was like, of course, the number one scandal that brings down male politicians, not keeping it in their pants.
Exactly. And don't they realize that? They always think they're going to be the ones to get away with it.
Exactly.
They're not going to get caught.
But yeah, this 2026 election is going to be it's going to be very very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And they got Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida. I just hope that the person that's running against her, that he will be able to win because there's so much crookedness with the Board of Elections there, with them rigging the numbers and the percentages for her,
Ugh,
and nothing gets done about it.
it's ridiculous.
And it was brought up that the district had changed, that there's more minorities in the district, and they felt the person who's running should be, that Debbie should step aside. But no, she doesn't want to.
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, she was promised I guess, a higher position or something. If she,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, please, enough is enough with her.
And I actually found something interesting in Michigan's 8th congressional district.
Okay.
So basically, during the Republican primary, there Trump actually came out and endorsed Amir Hassan, but there's a huge twist in that. The Trump candidate Amir Hassan actually lost the primary against Thomas J. Smith, who basically won 50% of over 50% of the vote. And not only here's the real kicker about this surprising primary win. Because not only did Thomas J. Smith win the primary against a Trump candidate, Thomas J. Smith won despite the fact that he dropped out.
He won despite he dropped out.
He actually withdraw, and even then, people voted for him.
Oh gosh,
So that's a twist.
that's a big twist.
Yeah. So now the Democrat incumbent Kristen McDonald Riven is going up against a Republican candidate who dropped out of the primary. So yeah, like I said, this 2026 election is going to be extremely interesting.
Definitely.
There are so many twists and turns I did not expect.
Mm-hmm. That's something. But we really need to get candidates in that are going to represent the people. We're so fed up, with both parties. You get excited for a candidate and then they don't represent you. So I'm just hoping this time around we'll get candidates that really do want to represent the people.
I do. We need more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see now. Oh yeah. Here's actually before we go to what's happening between Spain and Morocco, we actually got some we got something about in Colombia.
Okay.
It seems like there seems to be this weird um alliance between people are noticing there's some sort of weird alliance between the right wing conservative Alvaro Uribe, the former president of Colombia, and the current outgoing president left wing president Gustavo Petro. Basically, former President Alvaro Uribe actually sent a message to the next auditor of the Republic requesting that his management be characterized by impartiality and the absence of political persecution. Uribe stresses that the control body must act independently and transparently without becoming an instrument of retaliation against President-elect Abelardo de la Espriella or the current ruler Gustavo Petro once his term ends. The declaration arises amid the political transition that Colombia will live through and the debate about the role that the office of control will play in the next government. Uribe actually seeks to strengthen citizens' confidence in institutions and ensure that fiscal control is exercised with technical and nonpartisan criteria. In other words, Uribe is basically saying, "Don't go after don't go after Petro."
Right.
Which
Well,
is
it's still contested. I think Petro is filing documents
yeah,
that there was that it was raped, that there was wasn't a fair election. But we'll have to see how that goes.
yeah. Um, but yeah, Spreria is um, basically running for it's basically going to be sworn in basically in a few days and in a couple I think it's in a couple of days. So we're gonna have to see what will happen here.
Right. And he's not even being sworn in the Capitol, where normally they're sworn in. But Madeline had a good point, is the fact that on the streets there weren't people out there for him. It just seems that it was um, foreign people that were voting for him, the people that were living in the U.S. and different places. So I guess his concern is that you're not going to have a crowd there. So this is where he's taking it to the different location.
Yeah.
It's just so weird that electing somebody and he has no interest in Colombia. He's just a yes person for the USA and U.S. corporations and all of that. It's not about representing the people of Colombia.
Yeah, well, some people run for office for just for opportunity, for the power, for just for something.
Right? He says he was pushed into it. He really didn't want to do it, but whoever the people are that he associates with had
And
pushed, had as he has said that he was pushed into this whole thing. Well, I guess the fact that he has the dual citizenship.
yeah, and he's actually been there's actually been a push by many, including including President Gustavo Petro, to basically to renounce his dual citizenship and basically have solely be Colombian. Basically, it's his way. It's a political way of him saying choose a side who you're relying more on, Colombia or the United States. And it's basically a trap for Esperia, because basically if he chooses the United States, it's going to legitimize the illegitimacy that the left is trying to place on him.
Right. Yeah, so he's put in a spot. But technically, there should be somebody in office who lives there, who represents the people, that wants to represent the country. Putting somebody in there that's comfortable living in Miami and vacationing in Europe and whatever, with no interest in Colombia, and he can't stand Colombia, to have that person as your president, it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
Makes no sense at all.
I just, every time I look at a picture of Javier Malay, I'm like, why is every picture of Javier Malay look like he enjoys stringing puppies for a living?
That he does what?
Why does every picture of Javier Malay look like he's coked out of his mind and enjoys strangling puppies for a living?
I don't know.
Well, it's better than I can't even say it's better than it's I can't even say it's better than Espria, considering the fact that he blows up they literally blew up kids with fireworks.
I know, it's sickening, these people. What value does a person have to human life if that's what they're capable of doing? It's
It's
crazy.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And then the right wing Republicans, who are Cuban, just dual citizens living in the U.S., voted for him. It's terrible.
It is
Yeah,
terrible.
right. And he's with the military. He's wanted to create more detention centers. I mean, it's scary stuff. The same thing you're seeing everybody that gets in Latin America that's to the right. It's the same thing with all the detention centers. Building up the military. I mean, it's just horrible. Oh yeah, then they have to have their loyalty to Israel. It doesn't matter what other countries. The only thing is the loyalty to Israel and the Isaac Accords. In Latin America.
Yeah, every time I see these people who are like saying Zionists and be like, we have to support Israel. I'm like, are you stuck on loop? I heard you say, but I don't think I heard you say it, but I'm not going to support a country that's literally committing genocide, that they're cleansing. I'm not doing it. And it's like,
Right.
and he's like, then you're an anti-Semite. Are you stuck on? She's still like, then you're an anti-Semite. You're stuck on Lou. I'm not an anti-Semite. I have Jewish friends, but I just don't support genocide and ethnic cleansing. I'm not. That doesn't mean I hate Jewish people. Then I'm like, then she called me anti-Semite again. I was like, she's broken. Can we get a new one?
Yeah, it's crazy because the Palestinians, they're the true Semites.
Yeah, it's a weird irony.
It is. And I was thinking about that. When we look at the different religions, and for the Christians, Jesus spoke Aramaic, is a Semitic language. So, are we going to say that you're anti-Semitic if you don't like Christians, or if you say things against Christians, you're anti-Semitic because Jesus was spoke Aramaic? The whole thing doesn't make sense. And Arabic, as you know, is the largest Semitic language. So if you're anti-Arab, you are anti-Semitic. These people don't get it.
It's a weird, ridiculous, manipulative mind game that they always play.
Yes. Yeah, and it's getting old. People are just getting fed up with the whole thing. We want everybody to be accepted. You want all religions to be accepted. Why is it okay for these people to scream all this anti-Muslim stuff, anti-Islam? That is not right. That is wrong. Any religion that people are saying horrible things about, I mean, it's wrong.
Some people are just incapable of knowing what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah. Oh, what's this? I think. Okay. Oh, Evelina says one of the things Abelardo wants to walk back is agrarian reform, which allotted land for campesinos for illicit harvest, not cocaine. So he wants to walk back that. So for people that wanted to do farming, agrarian reform, agriculture, and so yeah, for illicit, for legal harvesting, he wants to walk back that.
It's a sad state of affairs.
It is.
Let's see now. Trying to find the information we got. I got information about what's happening between Spain and Morocco. Then I'm sure it was all over the news that basically Moroccan migrants basically enter several cities that was basically under Spanish control.
Well, yeah, because they were told to.
Yeah, and many people actually pointed out that what happened in that moment may have been coordinated.
Yes.
And also considered as basically Morocco's retaliation against Spain for having some trade with Algeria. I forgot what that trade thing was, but a lot is also saying this what happened in Morocco and between Morocco and Spain. It was coordinated basically by the Moroccan government and Israel, which is basically and the United States.
Yes, yeah, that's what I had heard as well.
Yeah, it was in order to basically punish Spain for its support for Palestine,
Yeah.
which
Um,
is super petty to basically use your own people as a way to punish another country.
yeah. It's terrible. It really is. They want everybody to think a certain way, to act a certain way. The tide is changing. People are sickened. They are sickened with what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank, East Jerusalem. They are sickened by it. It's a violation of international law. And the US keeps pushing the violation and saying that it's okay. I mean, it's sickening. People are so disgusted with it.
Then so yeah, what people are saying um, um, is that this what the crisis that was meant the crisis that happened It was this occurred in two cities in Quetta and Melilla, which has been Spanish since the 1400s, and before that it was Portuguese at around 700s. It was owned by countries from the Iberian Peninsula. Its most defective it most was not so it was definitely not Moroccan territory. But what's worth pointing out that it was many people, like I said, it's been it was basically a manufactured invasion to give Morocco, a staunch Israel ally, control of its northern tip in order to punish Spain for not allowing the U.S. forces to basically move its airspace over the Iran war.
And they have the right not to have their airspace used.
Exactly.
They don't want to be in the middle of the war.
Yeah, it's yeah. Many people are, and rightfully so, basically saying hey, don't leave me out of this. I don't want anything to do with this. And it's sad that the United States is constantly wants to drag everyone into its own problems.
Right. The countries have a right to decide what they want, what's in the best interest of their countries. Okay, Evelina says Spain is importing gas from Algeria. Morocco views Algeria as a rival. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Um, that thank you. That makes that definitely helps. Um, but yeah, everything. And if you notice all these pictures, um, pictures of the videos that's coming out of these what we saw was happening in Quetta and Melilla. Um, so, they most of these migrants we're not children or women. These were grown adult men,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, they
and
were.
so and yeah, many people have noticed it. Started noticing it's odd, like a flash mob. Like when I saw it, I was like, "What is this? A flash mob border crossing?" Hmm?
Yeah, because they said that it was on social media and there was, I guess, maybe newspapers. I don't know. They said there was like an advertisement and it was something for people to go over there.
Yeah, basically, why many people say this is a like I said, including there's been mounts of evidence proving was a coordinated effort by Morocco, by Morocco, the U.S. and Israel. The headline says, and as you know, the headline we've seen says that 60,000 people crossed the Spain within 24 hours. Then they tried to say the reason they're migrating was because of gang violence, blaming them for like the cartels in Mexico that the CIA funded. This doesn't sound odd to this should sound odd to everyone. So people did a little more. So we saw people doing a lot of digging into this. And in 2021, the Morocco was actually mad at Spain,
Mhm.
and so in response, they sent 9,000 people to swim those very same peninsulas, the ones that Morocco tightly policed,
Mm.
threatened threatened Spain's control over these territories, over Spanish territories. Well, so why was Morocco mad?
Right.
So after Spain, who then Spain, what was pushed out in the 1960s, the United Nations said that there needed to be a referendum for their independence for in the Western Sahara. In the Western Sahara, there should be a referendum for their independence, but that
Right.
didn't happen. Instead, Morocco moved in and occupied it.
Oh.
And so even though they did not legally own, even though they did not so they claim that they claim the Western Sahara is basically theirs, even though it's not legally theirs.
Right.
Yes, and the political party that wanted an independent Western Sahara, they've been fighting Morocco ever since. Ever since. And just recently they those groups, then those military groups in Western Sahara has been labeled as a terrorist group by the United States just recently.
Hmm.
And many see this as a huge win for Morocco, which is, as we know, is a staunch ally of Israel. Hmm. And, and since then, many people living in and many of those Western Sahara are living are basically Algerian refugees and refugee camps,
Hmm.
are living in Algerian refugee camps because Algerians and their revolutionary brothers and sisters, the black and the Black Panther Party had an international chapter there. Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay. So fast forward to 2021. Morocco had just signed the Abraham Accords, normalizing relationships with Israel. And in exchange, the U.S. recognizes Moroccan sovereignty um, over Western Sahara.
Hmm.
Sound, I know. And so basically, it was basically the United States saying, look, if you look, we'll recognize you occupying this land if you recognize another country occupying another country." And Morocco said, "Deal."
Now the U.S. always with the interference with stuff.
That's because the United States has a track record of interfering with stuff.
And then who knows? You buddy up with the U.S. and then another administration comes in. You don't know how you're going to be. And depending on how things are going in the world, if there's a new buddy there, the U.S. will stab you in the back. You don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and so Western Sahara has always been struggling for independence, even though the Western Sahara has been it's been recognized by many countries as an independent nation. The nation, there are still some countries that still haven't. Hmm.
Mhm.
It's basically it's basically a Palestine. It's like basically the Palestine situation. Nation.
Mhm. Terrible. There's no value to human life whatsoever. People being
Yeah,
stuck in the midst of things.
yeah. But back to 2021. Like I said, Morocco signed an Abraham Accord. In exchange, the United States recognized Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara. But it also the leaders the leaders of the Western Sahara's resistance movement, Brian Gali, caught COVID, and Spain, of all people, offered medical treatment, and that pissed Morocco off. So
Mhm.
in response, they flooded they flooded the Spanish borders with 9,000 people. So at this very moment, we should be asking more questions than drawing conclusions, because
Hmm.
it's looking kind of similar. Looking very similar. And think and many pointed out that this is, yeah, what Morocco's doing is it's both out of pure coordinations with out of both pure coordinations with the Zionist entity, but also at pure pettiness out of the pure pettiness against Morocco against Spain.
Right.
It's Yeah, and like I said, and like for example, why did Morocco just name a highway after Donald Trump? Why won't Spain let the U.S. use its airspace or bases in its war with Iran, its legal war with Iran? Why would anyone be upset at Spain, the World Cup champion?
Right. Why? Why would you be upset with Spain? Because Spain is looking out too for its citizens. They don't want to get bombed.
Yeah, and most importantly, why are you condemning a Spanish prime minister for calling out against genocide?
Right.
And why is the U.S. asking Spain to extradite James Fergie Cox, claiming he's a terrorist, giving millions of dollars of humanitarian aid to Gaza? And how come everybody is tripping over 60,000 people crossing a border, still in a border that's in Spanish territory?
Right.
Over half, and which the Spanish government already came out and say that most of them already left.
Right.
So this wasn't much of a less of a border crisis, and more like it's basically like a warning.
Yeah. The U.S. That's what the U.S. does. And it's kind of like a warning to, I guess, other people in Europe, too, other countries in Europe.
Yeah, and there was also a tweet and also there was the Spanish government actually put out a post where they used your Netanyahu's son that actually came up with a plan up that involves Morocco sending in people through to the city to the city. I think I forgot where that post is, but yeah, it's many are pointing out like, yeah, this was definitely a coordinated effort.
Right.
Um, as well in uh, let's see, I got here's one here. I got two more things to talk about. So basically, there's actually been something going on in Israel, and that Israeli soldiers mutinied and laid down weapons at the Sit Taiman torture prison.
Yes. Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was considered the largest mutiny in Israeli military history. It is, and many people are like, wow, maybe some Israeli soldiers are opening up or finding seeing humanity. Like, no, they're not. It's not about the complicity in genocide over the it was over a commemorative plaques. It was That's actually what it was over. And
Right.
according to Israeli media, nearly 100 soldiers from the I'm not even going to pronounce these names. Laid down their weapons and left the Sit Taiman torture prison. They claimed the prison infamous for its human rights violation against Palestinians, and they left over a dispute with their battalion commander over new disciplinary measures and the removal of a longstanding battalion plaques.
Hmm.
Commanders removed the battalion commemorative plaques, bearing nicknames such as Angels of Death and Demons and Vampires. And these are commemorations of war crimes against the people of Palestine, and
Oh,
they mutiny and lay down their weapons over it. Israeli outlets Yenet reported that the soldiers left the base without authorization. They abandoned their military posts as a protest against their commander's decision to remove the signs and symbols that displayed. And now the mass walkout has rendered the battalion combat ineffective at the time when the Israeli military is already facing an extreme manpower shortage. And
mhm.
again, it's not because of the inhumane treatments of Palestinians. It's not because of several physical and sexual abuse and medical neglect or documented incidences of assault and rape against Palestinian detainees. No, it was because Israeli soldiers could no longer be as evil as they want to be.
It's sickening. It's sickening. I just don't understand. I just don't understand that mindset. But then again, they're brainwashed. They're brainwashed into this. It's just
Uh,
horrible that a society would do that.
Yeah, I would at this point I would have recognized I would have considered a lobotomy for these people, but I think these people are so mind-numbingly gone. I don't think it'll make any much difference.
It's horrible that they brainwash the people like that. I mean, it's ugh, and nobody's doing anything. That's what bothers me. We read all that's going on, and all the countries that are out there, no one's doing anything to stop Israel.
Exactly.
And then in the U.S., them saying, "Oh, Israel's our friend," and all these different laws, with Trump and even his predecessor. But look at the atrocities that Israel is doing. And it would be if another country was doing the same thing, would be upset with that as well. But this happens to be Israel doing it.
Exactly. It's it's ridiculous.
And we look at international law, it's like where is there a force being put together to stop what's going on in Israel? Because this can happen to anyone. You see it that they're getting away with it. The U.S. and Israel are getting away with it. So this could go on anyway.
I think it's mostly the fear and the reluctance of holding others accountable. It's mainly out of, and I think it's this weird obligation of supporting allies no matter what. But it can only go both ways.
Right. This is just horrible. We live in the U.S. and it's just like this is what our government is doing, and all these people, whether the Democrats, the Republicans, none of them are stopping this. It's infuriating. We want action to stop this. You look at, like you said, all these other countries that aren't doing anything either. People talk, they'll condemn, and all of that, but the condemning and the talking, it's not stopping the suffering. It's not stopping the abuse.
Exactly.
It's just such evilness. They have it on their media too. Some of the TV channels, they just allow all this, and all these political people come on and they just talk such evil. Any other country that was doing that would be hearing all about it. Oh, this country, something's got to be done. Look at what they say, what they're doing, and but Israel, it's like, oh, it's silent. The silence of the mainstream media and all. It's just horrific. It really is, and we want action now. Everybody's screaming. That's what I see on social media. Everybody's screaming, action now, action now. They want this to stop. and the world continues to be silent. We want action on the ground, change things.
Hmm. And I would say this, and Israel is going to fall. Either by its own hands, or by another outside threat. Who knows? But Israel's downfall is coming.
And it's pushing it too, because it's pushing that they want to attack Iran. They want to continue that with Iran. They want to go after Turkey.
And Egypt, they're actually considering. Some of them are even considering attacking Egypt.
Right. Their downfall. And you have these countries, that have been, well, puppets, for example. Egypt's been a puppet for Israel and the U.S. Even though the people are pro-Palestinian, the majority of the people, but the government just, is a puppet for the U.S. and Israel. But how long can this go on?
Yeah. All right.
And Turkey talks from both sides of its mouth all the time.
Well, given the fact that Turkey is part of NATO, as well as it also supports Palestine. They kind of have this. They have to do this weird balancing act.
Hmm. Right. So here, if Israel thinks it's going to go and attack Turkey, Turkey, like you said, is a NATO member. NATO is supposed to stick together.
Yeah, but like I said, yeah, but then again, that can only go both ways. So whether or not they will actually support, they will actually, they would put actually hold Israel accountable. That's gonna be yet to be seen.
Hmm. Yeah, and we'll see. Like we say, the U.S. Is weakened, as we know, because of its actions where Iran is concerned and its actions, with Ukraine. So I mean, the U.S. is weakened. So Israel starts attacking Iran. I mean, there's not much the U.S. can do, to protect Israel, and the U.S. bases are in bad shape. But Israel keeps thinking, oh, we got to, weaken Iran. And there was a woman in the Knesset was saying that, oh, she can't wait for the day when she can walk down the streets of Tehran.
That's ridiculous.
It is. It's like they're really not looking at the geopolitical situation. They're just looking at this greater Israel, because they're seeing with Syria and Lebanon. But Syria and Lebanon, that's not Iran, it's not Turkey. And I mean, Egypt has, from what I understand, a strong military force. So I don't know.
Well, we'll have to see.
Yeah. So yeah, Evelina was talking in the comments about how you pronounce Suetra, Sueta.
Hmm.
After E and I, the C makes an S sound. Suesta, Suesta,
Uh,
Sueta,
hmm.
Sueta. Okay. Well, do you have anything else?
Um, Actually, one last thing. It's called, I call it the Andy Burnham update. Hmm.
Okay.
So basically, many are actually, I expect, were when Andy Burnham became prime minister. Many people actually expected, um, were actually expecting Burnham to basically run to become basically run as a will govern as a left winger. Oh,
Okay.
already he has, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Because already he's spoken about Britain taking over the. Because, as you know, he did say during his speech, he did say that Britain took a wrong turn in the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher, which rightfully so, because let's be
Yes.
honest, no one likes Thatcher. Hmm?
Right.
Hmm. He actually introduced a new cost of living support, and he pledges to end rough sleeping. But the evidence of Burnham's actually moving to, but more evidence are now coming out that shows that Burnham is actually moving to the right somewhat, with key government positions being occupied by those on the right of the Labour Party, party,
Okay.
and and suggestions that Burnham could cut government spending in certain places. Mm. So we're gonna. So I think it's important to talk about this exactly what Burnham has done that suggests he's moving to the right, and whether it's fair to characterize Andy Burnham as a leader that's pivoting to the right, as another leader pivoting to the right. Well, let's look at it. Well, that's I think those are questions that needs to be asked.
Right.
Um, sorry, sorry, I've been fighting something, so that's why um
Right.
I've been clearing my throat. So now when Burnham became prime minister last week, one of his first tasks was basically form a cabinet because of
Right.
course you have to do that. You know, for weeks there's been frenzied speculation that exactly what positions certain politicians will be governed, notably allies like Miliband and Lisa Nandy. However, one of the most spoken about potential cabinet members was Shabana Mahmood, someone particularly controversial in the labor circle as a result of her immigration reform. As Home Secretary under Keir Starmer, Mahmoud introduced the asylum and immigration bill, which increases the basically increases the forced removal of people refused asylum, tying definitions of petitions the definitions under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, or the EH or the ECHR, to limit their
Mm-hmm.
use and create a new tribunal for immigration and human rights appeals, which will be used before cases sent to the judges. Mahmoud has also pushed forward new changes to indefinite leave to remain. Suggesting that the time taken qualifies should increase from 5 to 10 years. This was not included in the asylum and immigration bill, however,
Right.
and will instead likely be changed by secondary and legislation. In addition to these changes, Mahmoud is further frustrated that those on the left in her party for her suggestions. Again, and again, back when she was Home Secretary under Keir Starmer, that AI could play more of a role in combating crime. And Mahmoud announced in January that the government planned to increase the number of facial recognition bans from 10 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
And in an interview with Tony Blair, Blair said that reviewed that she wanted to achieve by means of AI and technology what Jeremy Bentham tried to do with the uh, panopticon panopticon. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, For obvious reasons, these proposed changes frustrated those on the left who didn't want to see Mahmoud anywhere near Burnham's new government. But despite this, there was some speculation that Mahmoud would potentially be given one of the great offices of state, potentially even the role of chancellor. In the end, Mahmoud was reappointed to a role as home secretary. Mm. So and that was a this was a and many see this as the first sign that Burnham's government was moving to the right. The other signs came largely from the statements on policies. Now, one of one of the big rebellions that severely damaged Keir Starmer's authority were was planning to cut the UK's welfare bill. Um, yeah, Keir Starmer's and Keir, yeah, this uh, that was many saw that as one of his as was part of his downfall.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer had originally planned to narrow the eligibility for personal independence payment or PIP, and to introduce restrictions on universal credit. However, after facing a major backbench rebellion orchestrated by those on the left of the party, he was forced to back down on these changes. And Burnham though seems keen to succeed to see where Starmer has failed, with him reportedly planning to crack down on youth sickness benefits in order to pay for social care and defense. While we don't yet know exactly how this crackdown will work, it's noticeable that at the very same time he discussed this he's discussing this. Burnham is also announcing an extra 8.4 billion pounds in investments for British nuclear deterrence, and promising to cut welfare by increasing defense spending. Certainly, sort of basically sort of a move that those on the left of Labour will likely wanting him to make. On economic policies, there have been rumors since he took office that Burnham may be planning to radically change how the tax system works. There, there's also been rumors that he may be considering introducing changes to the way that council tax and stamp duty works, with some outlets suggesting um, that he may introduce a 0.48 additional charge on the values of property, or maybe something simpler, like an increase an increase in the tax-free personal allowance, the threshold of which has been frozen since 2021. But however, already Burnham has started to pour cold water on these ideas. Downing Street Downing Street is explicitly stated that rumors about council tax and stamp duties were not true and pure speculation. On the tax-free allowance, Burnham suggested that he isn't making an immediate commitment, but pointing out that it could that, that could be reviewed at the budget. And again, this demonstrates that perhaps Burnham isn't going to be as radical as some of those on the left may have thought. On the on the big on the big change that the way the on the big changes that the way that on the way that counts the council taxes and stamp duty works, the potentially bringing in the types of land value taxes, which has previously spoken out of favor of. Previously spoken out of favor of. Burnham has been clear that they're not being considered. It's only the smaller, more incremental changes that he appears willing to legislate. So there are numbers of the ways that we can see that Andy Burnham is moving, potentially to the right. But however, Burnham is something of a complex political figure. He can't simply be characterized by someone moving Labor to the right, because in some many other ways he's also pivoted to the left.
Okay.
Already Burnham has committed more than 10 billion pounds in extra government spending. He outlined a new cost of living support. He capped bus fares, and he's already earmarked the extra and 340 million pounds in government support over the next 3 years to help reduce rough sleeping. On top of this, he established number 10 North, a symbolic and practical way to try of trying to move power out of Westminster and make um, make the country fairer to those living in the regions.
Okay.
Burnham has claimed that this will have three purposes: to increase public control of essential utilities such as water, energy, and housing, to reindustrialize swaths of the country, and to regenerate towns, prioritizing places that have basically been left behind. So those are good things.
Yes, they are good things, and from what I understand, they're monetary sovereign. So there's no reason why they can't provide for the public good.
Exactly. Um, And so all of these things, all these things points the prime minister that he is trying to move more radical and more amendable to parts of the left of the Labour Party. Perhaps, perhaps then Burnham is doing what a lot of prime ministers have realized they have to do when they take office. He's not governing in a purely ideological way,
Hmm.
and but a more pragmatic one, and one takes into account the view of more more than one faction of the party. Now, yeah. So like I said, Burnham is a like I said, it's a pretty interesting figure. So because even though some say that like there's some he is moving to the he's somehow moving to the right. For example, reappointing Mahmoud as Home Secretary and all the things I said. He's also doing a lot of left wing policies. So he's not running on either side. He's basically running as a pragmatist.
Okay, because the one thing is that Trump, to Europe is after them to put more money into military spending, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, Europe is falling apart because of Trump, I have to say, and I could say the predecessor as well.
I was like, and Keir Starmer, like I said, when we talked about Keir Starmer before, like Keir Starmer was when we first talked about him during the 2024 election, in when he was running for prime minister, with like conservatives lost in a massive blowout. To put it mildly, he's a pretty bland. And Keir Starmer basically ran as a plain and basically was in parliament as a pretty bland centrist,
Yeah.
and and um and to the point that people didn't really know where he stands. Hmm, His stance, which when you and because the funny thing is, they was doing this word cloud to describe your leader, describe someone. And when they did funny thing is, when they did Rishi Sunak, the word cloud included the word rich, liar, and rich and liar, but it also includes the T word and the C word. Hmm.
Ooh.
They put that on the news. Enough people called the prime minister the C word that it made the news.
Oh my gosh.
It almost makes me it almost envy their patriotism.
Huh.
And for the audience, I wanted to be clear. In the C word in the UK and as well in Australia is much more different in the US. Here in the US, it's basically used by red pill basement boys towards powerful women. But it's, but it's a, but the, but in the UK, in the UK and Australia, it's much more of a more of a multilateral, universal insult.
Okay.
So just want to keep that in mind. It's yeah. It's a non-gender multi-purpose in your universal insult.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know the anger over there. I've seen it on social media, and the people are just infuriated.
Yeah, but back to Starmer. Yeah, like I said, like I said, he to put him he people, like I said, to put it in mind, like he's a typical bland, he's a very bland centrist, and when and in that same word cloud, when people were asked to describe the Keir Starmer, then a fun fact about Keir Starmer, there aren't any. Literally, there aren't any. In fact, when posters asked voters to describe the Starmer stance, and as Starmer stands for, the response included nothing, not sure, and don't know. His most notable attributes may have been having no real notable attributes at all, as a pollster dedicatedly said that Keir Starmer that half of the UK population don't really perceive that don't know anything about where Keir Starmer stands on, and only 1 in 5 people in the UK say he's good in a crisis or has a personality. Okay, okay. Set aside the brutal areas where he needs is a brutal that brutal insult that poster gave.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad when you when a poster had to come out and say like, yeah, 1 in 5 people in this country thinks you're interesting. That'd be like saying a poster came out on TV saying that 1 in 10 Americans think Hillary Clinton is the new Beyonce. Which it will never happen, Hillary. Don't try.
No.
But even though he basically ran to the center, Starmer basically ran to the center, he pretty much during his time as prime minister, Starmer very much started pandering to the right.
Right.
Right, and people, and which rightfully so, alienated a lot of left wing voters, which could have which usually used to vote Labor, but instead moved to the Green Party.
Yeah, Evelina says, I would love to see Corbyn as prime minister someday. I think a lot of people would like to see Jeremy Corbyn.
I think I think in the UK there was a snap election that back then there was where there was an almost attempt of a Keir Starmer prime ministership. It was the UK was actually pretty close of having a prime minister Corbyn, but the UK has a very complex parliamentary system.
Yes.
And so yeah, and it could have been really interesting, because even though that in 2017 where Theresa May actually lost her majority, it could been in which at the time she had to literally rely on the DUP, which is a unionist party in Northern Ireland. It caused a lot of backlash.
Right.
And many people were rightfully so frustrated.
Oh, definitely. But just know the people over there are, they're so annoyed with stuff, and then all of this with Trump, and I know, like in Europe, a lot of them used to get a lot of resources from Russia, and They can't do that. Um, it's a mess over there.
Yeah,
Oh, Evelina says yes, it was close, but in the end, it was rigged against him. Yes.
yeah. But if I would say it would have been interesting that if the if the Corbyn with I don't know somehow had a perform a miracle of uniting forming basically a coalition government with the with the Scottish National Party, the Liberal Democrats, and possibly Sinn Féin. He would have most he would have and with the Greens, he would have very most likely end up becoming prime minister in a very left wing basically in a sort of a center left wing government. I'm just saying, if that would have happened, we could have had a Jeremy Corbyn. We don't know. We just don't know.
Because all this right winging is destroying Europe. All this with Ukraine and Russia, Europe is taking a beating from it all.
It's a sad state of affairs.
Mm-hmm. Then Trump gets on their case about things. It's like, just leave them alone. You may be right, Denarde, says Evelina. Trump always saying, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't get your oil, you can't get resources from Russia, you gotta get it from here, there. I mean, and it's more expensive and it's more costly because they got their goods and their oil from Russia, and everything was fine. The U.S. is just no good for Europe anymore. They've got to rethink things. I believe the coalition might have worked. Mm-hmm.
I just hope things really change soon.
Oh, I do too.
But as I said about Burnham, like I said, we still need to keep a close eye on him.
Oh, definitely.
Because keep in mind that, and I get the people's frustration of the fact that they've been governed by the same toward by the Conservative Party for basically 14 years.
Yes.
And people were sick and tired of it, and so let's be honest. I think that many people did not have any faith in Keir Starmer actually being a leader of change, because Starmer is a like I said, Starmer is a corporate opportunist.
Yes.
Who basically will say he will say and do anything,
Right.
in order to get enough power. And so when he does get it, he'll toss you to the curb.
Mm-hmm.
As we've seen many politicians do. Looking at you, John Fetterman.
I know, he is disgusting, John Fetterman. I don't know. You should just become a Republican. It's just so disgusting. And then sitting down and talking to Netanyahu, oh, the war criminal. I mean, Netanyahu is sickening, and he sits there and talks with them. And Fox News is the one that will have Netanyahu on, and they try to act like he's a human, and we know he's not a human. Oh, he is disgusting. I don't know what kind of creature he is, but he is just evil. And he tries to talk so nicely, like, Israel is just, oh, we're just looking out for ourselves and the world and this and that. He just lies. He lies and lies and lies. And from what I understand, when he talks in Hebrew, In Israel, he talks completely different. He's like a slickster and stuff. I mean, he's disgusting, Netanyahu.
I mean, this is a guy who spent decades and staying in power, and is shown to be willing to do anything to squeeze out more. So I want to I want to be surprised if he actually gets ousted from office in this election. But given of all the facts that all the horrific crap, all the stuff that the stuff that Israelis are going through, and the fact that all the horrific corrupt crap that he's able to get away with, this time, a lot of people are saying like enough is enough. But I
Yeah,
think it's also important that even like I said, like I said time and time again, even if Netanyahu is gone, it's going it's going to be replaced by someone worse. Eisenkot even though he's running as a centrist, he's still like I said, many of these candidates who are running for prime minister, like Eisenkot, Bennett, and Bennett, they share a lot of or most of Netanyahu's policies, but with a media savvy package and don't have a corruption scandal hanging over their heads.
right,
That's basically the biggest difference.
right. And it's just showing the face of Israel. This is these are the people that are showing the face of Israel. Um, but like I said, they don't have that salesmanship that Netanyahu has. But still, it's disgusting. The whole thing is disgusting. And it just it's infuriating. It really is because these right wingers over there, they make it difficult for the average Israeli that just wants to live in peace with their neighbors. Um, they'll say, "Well, they're not real Jews because they don't fall in line with what the right wing wants." It's just terrible because I've seen some clips and I've read up on that, and it's just really it's a tough situation for the people that aren't in that right wing clique, and it seems the U.S. keeps sending over more of those right wingers from Brooklyn and who knows where else. Horrible people they send, that get sent over there. And it's interesting that when you hear some people saying, "Oh, we just want to live peacefully with everybody," yeah, I'm fine with a one state with everybody's equal. That's great. That's great. But the media doesn't really all the time show these people. I don't think they rarely show them. There's a lot of people that don't like the system the way it is, but they they're not the majority. But like I said, that long term brainwashing, and unless you have a parent that can say, "No, this is not right," but when you have these parents that go along with the atrocities and that horrible way of thinking, I mean, you just keep having one generation after the next with this thinking. And what gets me is not even the teachings of Judaism. I mean, they've kind of lost their way.
I think it's so much go. It's just so much,
Hmm.
and I'm so and I hate to be that person, but Israelis are basically a lost cause. Even if we could, even if we could at least, and if we can convince some Israelis that we need to stop treating Palestinians as you know as and treat Palestinians and actually start treating Palestinians as human beings, as people with mothers, people with children, people with fathers, people who are doctors, people who are caregivers, the
Hmm.
caregivers. Then it would be just like convincing one. It's like can be a huge victory, but they've been Israelis have been indoctrinated for like for so many years. It's
Hmm.
going to it's going to who knows how long it's going to take to reach an opinion, reach get them to see reason.
Right, because the education system, because I remember seeing a clip of these kids singing, all the world hates Arabs. And so they indoctrinate them from a very young age. And, it's not true unless you have a parent that says, well, this is wrong. That's not true. But yeah, there's the parents that go along with it. And I remember this woman from Australia, she was saying that when she moved from Israel to Australia, she was very nervous. She was brought up that the world hated Israelis and that Israel hated Jewish people, and that Israel was the only safe place they could go. It was the only safe place they could live. And when she went to Australia, she was very nervous about it, but then she realized she had been lied to. And there are a lot of stories that you hear people saying they were lied to, but like you said, there needs to be a mass type of system to wake up people, to change the education system there, just to change the teachings, the way they teach people. And you have the people there that distort the Torah, they distort the Jewish teachings, and try to use it in a political sense. It's terrible.
Deeply terrible.
Hmm. And that's where, like when Harsh and I were talking last night, the buddy buddy between Modi and Netanyahu is that whole supremacist. Modi thing, is a supremacist for Hindu, and Netanyahu's a supremacist. So it's really a horrible thing. People that have that supremacist mindset, that if you don't fit in the clique, sorry for you. It's just terrible.
This whole racial superiority thing, it's ridiculous.
It
And
is.
like you don't see, like I don't see, like it's ridiculous that people can just wake up one morning and just say we're the superior race. Like no one is superior. Okay, like you're not superior.
Exactly. Right, and they just brainwash people with that whole supremacy. Yeah, it's maddening. It's maddening. That's going to be the difference with Harsh and I were talking about the Jewish group in India that was allowed to move to Israel. Now they're used to looking like everybody else. So now they're going to be going over there and moving in there, and we know how a lot of Israelis are. So they're going to have a wake up call. Granted, they're Jewish, just like the people over there. They're Jewish, but they have a darker skin. So you're going to have the racism, something that they weren't used to over in India.
No, just as long as they hate Muslims, I think that's all that matters.
Mhm.
And we've seen how Israelis treat other ethnic minorities.
Right. We see the Ethiopian Jews. How
Yeah,
they treated.
exactly. Like y'all sterilize like probably hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians.
Right. They're from the region. They're from the region. They're not, somebody that came from Europe. These people are from the region. They go back generations. And,
Exactly.
it's maddening. It really is. Bringing the white supremacy over to the Middle East.
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
It's maddening, this world we live in. Sometimes I think we live in a big nut house.
You know, and the only entertain the only people being entertained is the ruling class.
Right, exactly. Like I said, you were talking about the elections. I just really hope enough people, wake up, want change, and will try to do something for change.
I think at this point, but when they wake, I think the moment they wake up is when they realize when they have not when they have nothing to lose.
Mm.
It's going to take a lot to get people to get to the took a lot to get for people to get to that situation.
Right, and it's like, okay, we don't have health care. We have it's such a mess for people. Um, so many people don't have health care at all, and they technically could, but they don't. The U.S. doesn't want them to. Um, and also, with education, how it changed. Everything is against people. Even when you take away the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and um, what is it going to take with people? It's it's infuriating. We're monetary sovereign. We could have all these things, and people just they don't get it. The public good. The government, the federal government, is there for the public good, to act for the public good.
Exactly.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I think that's about it.
Yeah, I was thinking so too. Yes. So I'm going to be going up again to my sister's up in Lisbon, Connecticut. So I'll be driving there tomorrow and Friday, I believe. And so um, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be having a
I
show.
wish you good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, it's quite the ride, but it's not as bad as say when I used to live in Florida. That was the hike. Now I'm in Georgia, so it's not too much of a hike. But I'll see whether I'm going to have a show tomorrow night. I'm really not too sure because Harsh was talking about it, but and I got to talk to Madeline to see probably over the weekend. Yeah, Madeline and I last time we had Sunday, where they show Sunday evening. Yeah, Madeline's got a different schedule, so I try to go with her schedule. Oh yeah, Evelina says have a safe trip. Thank you, Evelina. And I think on that note, yeah, just everybody keep doing what we're doing. We keep sharing information and sharing information. And people are writing to their elected officials. We see people out protesting. We got to keep at it. Social media is good to keep sharing information because, as we know, I know with Western media, they just have their own. I should say propaganda. Really, it's the way they want to skewer information, not telling the complete analysis of things. So it's important to keep sharing what's going on in the world and different viewpoints. So please share the show out. If you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, 'cause that's my new YouTube channel. Hasn't been around long. Um, they took down my other one, so here I am again with a YouTube channel. I don't know. This is the world we live in. And if you could share the show out, I'd appreciate it. And just keep sharing. As we say, sharing is caring. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Denarde?
Just continue spreading the word. Continue keeping yourself keep the knowledge going, and let's keep sharing.
Yes. Like we say, we're all a family. We're all in this together. And like we've said so many times where Palestine is concerned, we're all Palestinians. We are all Palestinians. And I don't think they're not going to do what what they're doing to the Palestinians. They will do it all around the world. We're all Palestinians, and we all have to be there for each other. And Evelina says, "Thanks, Donate, for the topics."
No problem.
Okay, thank you all, and I'm going to sign out. Good night, Evelina, and thank you for being here and for your comments. And also, Wayne was here. Thank you, Wayne, for being here. And all those watching the show and didn't comment, yes, we appreciate you being here as well. And just going to say good night. Peace out, free Palestine, and, free the world. Even free the USA, right, Donardi?
That's correct.
Free us. Okay, good night, everyone.